My name is Moses Tutt, and I am CEO and founder of ALM Clothing. ALM is also known for ambitious, legendary movement. We are a clothing brand that portrays outspoken individuals who strive to achieve extraordinary goals, no matter race, color, or ethnicity. We just try to promote, giving it your best and following your dreams as a person, as an individual.
We're here to talk about South Sudan crisis. How did this current conflict come to be, and were there any prior events which may have fueled this current conflict, which some believe has killed more than 20,000 and has displaced under 500,000 civilians? Wow.
Before I begin, I guess I just want to incorporate a quote from Peter Gresky, who's very intellectual and has, this quote is, I guess, portraying to the current conflict. The fall to war lies in not the DNA of the South Sudanese tribes. It lies with the political leaders who use ethnic patronage to build their power bases or who ignite their ethnic kin to carry out geographic or political niche. So essentially, this whole conflict is not what the world views it as an ethnic conflict. It's a political crisis within the SPLM political party. And I guess we could go back about till 1983 is when basically the first rift between Sudan, I guess, happened with John Guttung, who was basically the founding father of South Sudan, and he led South Sudanese people to form the SPLA army, who fought in a 23-year civil war from 1983 until 2005. So essentially, there was an embezzlement of military salaries and just a misdistribution of salaries between the ethnic groups. So that led to people saying, hey, why aren't our people getting money and your people getting all the money over here? So, that led through conflicts, and that ignited the war between the North and the South. North being the Muslim country and mostly Muslim people up there, and then the South is mostly Christian. So just through religious tensions, that also fueled the conflict that started.
How did the Boer, how do you say that, the B-O-R?
Yeah, Boer.
Boer. How did the Boer massacre of 1991 affect the country?
The Boer massacre of 1991 affected the country through just tensions and drifts between the Nuer and the Dinka ethnic group, which essentially led to basically the first, I guess, the political fight for power. Riek Machar, which is the vice president of South Sudan currently, who got fired in July and is now the rebel leader of the opposition leader, he led a defect from the SPLA army and formed the SPLA Nasser with a man called with a man called Lam Achol. They both defected from the SPLA and formed the SPLA Nasser, mainly supporting the Nuer group. And then the SPLA, led by John Guttung, was the Dinka group. So they felt as if John Guttung was being a dictator and not, being fair through the other ethnic groups. So that led to the Boer massacre in 1991, which Riek Machar had a part in, which left 2,000 people dead in Boer, mostly Dinka people. So that outraged, the current president now, and he just had feelings from that incident.
When did Riek Machar rejoin the SPLA?
He rejoined the SPLA in 2002, and he publicly apologized to the South Sudan community and the Dinka community, and also John Guttung's widowed wife, Madam Nyandeng Guttung, for just the acts that he did, and he admittedly saying that he had part in the Boer massacre, which left about 2,000 people killed.
After Gattung's death in 2005, Salva became his predecessor and president of South Sudan. Were there any conflicts between I can't say Machar, in Kir at the time?
Yeah, after Garang's death in 2005, months prior to that, in 2005, they just signed basically the CPA, which signed the truce from the North and the South. The Civil War finally ended. And then, I mean, some believe otherwise of his death in a helicopter crash, but the hostilities were still high, I guess, between Mike Char and Salva Kiir, the current president now, just through the Boer massacre and what happened there. And he essentially just didn't want anything to do with him.
After Rick's appointment of vice presidency, how much influence did he have in the country?
Rick's influence in the country was very limited because of just his appointment and what he did in the government. I mean, after the CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, was signed in 2005, and then Garang died later on that year in 2005. Salva Kiir became the first vice president of Sudan and then the president of South Sudan. Sudan was just a whole country through the world's eyes, but through the Sudanese eyes, we had an anonymous government where the North had their own government and the South had their own government. So Salva became president of Sudan and then vice president of South Sudan in that sense, and went to Khartoum to form his parliament. And just according to Tut Duob Jing, who wrote an article, it's called The War Between Logic and Emotion. And he wrote in it that General Polino Metip in Khartoum advised, Salva Kiir to have Riek Machar in the meetings to assemble the parliament and to assemble the government of the southern people. Salva Kiir didn't want to have anything to do with him until the second drafts. He finally allowed him. And then in second drafts, he was appointed two positions. He was appointed Foreign Affairs and then United Nations. Paulino didn't like that and said, hey, you need to appoint him as vice president. We all know that, that for the sake and unity of the Nuer people and the Dinka people, he needs to be vice president, because for people to coexist, they need someone up there who's, I guess, expressing their interests and their views. So he finally, agreed unwillingly and appointed him as vice president. But through his presidency from 2005, or his vice presidency, through 2005 through until he got sacked in July, he wasn't very effective because of Salva's little implements and what he did to basically shut his political power down. He took away his duties of appointing new members and appointing people to the government, and basically gave that duty to other people of the parliament, which was supposed to be a duty the vice president held. And in all governments, that's how it's supposed to be. And then also just the staff, his staff in his office, were denied official appointment to earn the civil service or civil servant status. So basically, they just weren't viewed as the normal staff of everybody else's, and even though there was many complaints, they never said anything, they never raised any questions, they just let it be, to try to stay calm, to try to stay democratic, I guess.
So what happened on July 23rd, 2013?
On July 23rd, 2013, the president of South Sudan announced and reshuffled the whole government. He basically sacked the entire government, fired everybody, and then reappointed whoever he felt best to fit that point. But, according to Peter Kur Malol, which is a former employer of South Sudan, he used to work in one of the ministry buildings, and he's an eyewitness to the counts that happened from December 15th until the 18th. He came over to the United States and talked a little bit at a forum we hosted in Northfield, Minnesota last Friday. And he was saying that Kiir was appointing people who didn't fulfill those spots adequately in regards to just the academic credentials required to host those positions. there was one instance where Kiir appointed the same man as legal advisor and justice of, or minister of justice in South Sudan. So basically contradicting the two roles, because you can't have the legal advisor of the president be the minister of justice, because who's supposed to enroll the forces to try the president if he does anything wrong? Not his legal advisor plus the minister of justice. So basically, conflicts. And then just, he just reshuffled everybody up, and that caused a lot of tensions, and people were just wondering, what's going to happen, since in the Constitution he has the right, but in a democratic state they viewed it as, undemocratic as to why the president would just reshuffle the whole government.
So what happened on December 6th, 2013?
The other members of the SPLM political party, which stands for the Sudan People Liberation Movement, they were hosting rally. They were attempting to host a rally to, uprise all the wrongdoings that were happening in the country, and to politically voice their opinions out, and to try to, get right attention to the subject and what was happening. So the president didn't like that, and they hosted that rally. In the meetings, they're hosting questions, asking the president, what's been going on and all that. President didn't like that at all. And then Riek Machar, which was the former vice president and also the rebel leader now, came out and publicly announced that he was going to contest for the SPLM chairman and contest in the 2015 elections for the head seat. So Salva Kiir didn't like that at all. He was very angry and didn't like that. And they went to the meetings, and the first two questions that the president didn't like and didn't want to answer was, where did the $4.5 billion that was stolen from the country, where did that go, and is it going to be repaid? He didn't answer that question. He didn't like that. And then the second question was, why did you personally go and recruit, I think it was a sum of like 15,000 personal militia of your own? Like, he went to his hometown of Bor and got Dinka people who were from his tribe and trained them from when they were young until basically now, and has trained 15,000 personal presidential guards, what they're called as the Tiger Unit. They're known as the Tiger Unit, and they were just, raising questions as to, if you really wanted 15,000 personal presidential guards, why didn't you just take 15,000 from the SPLA National Army, the National Army of the South Sudan? Why didn't you just take them from there? And, he just didn't want to comment on that. And then his vice president comes into the meeting and says, he just starts insulting all the colleagues, insulting all the government officials there. And these were people who he fought with back in the war, in the liberation war, to get our freedom and to finally succeed from Sudan. And these are people he thought that were his friends. He's just insulting them, going through insults. So they left the meeting saying it was very undemocratic and a very bad situation to basically be in. So yeah, they left the meeting, and they were trying to postpone the next rally until December 14th. But the National Liberation Council held their annual meeting on December 14th. So they're saying, all the major government officials will be there anyways, so why not bring up those questions again and talk through peaceful dialogue at that meeting? So they all planned that, and they essentially did that.
Just a quick question before I go to the next one.
Yeah.
Isn't the fact that he went to his hometown and got all the people from his tribe, I guess, isn't that probably what makes people think it has to do with the racial thing?
Mm-hmm. I mean, with the race thing, it's all, he made it a race thing. When December 14th came, it wasn't before, it was just a political crisis within the SPLM government and within the officials who were running the country. They were having, differentiating views on how to run the country, and most of them were saying, you're being a dictator, you're not allowing democratic peace, so let's host meetings to have peaceful dialogue and to solve this problem within the SPLM.
All right. And so what happened on December 14, 2013?
December 14th of 2014, the NLC Art 13. Yeah, maybe tell me.
Yeah,
What
let's see. It says December 14th, or was it 13th?
Art December 14th, 2013. Yep. All right. The NLC meetings were held, and the NLC is the National Liberation Council, where the two archbishops, one from the Catholic Church of South Sudan and one from the Episcopal Church of Sudan, came to this meeting, and they gave a speech saying, let's have peaceful dialogue. We pray for peace, and we pray for this meeting to go well, and we want the people of South Sudan to have a peaceful Christmas. So they have the right to pray and the right to religion. Let's please just have and diffuse what is happening in the crisis. And then the Catholic bishop came out and said the same thing. And then the UN secretary to South Sudan is Hilda Johnson. She came out and basically reiterated what the archbishops were saying of having peaceful dialogue and having progress in these meetings. And then the president just comes out right away and goes, essentially he just drops a bombshell on everybody and just starts insulting everyone again, saying that he will not allow the 1991 Boer massacre to happen again by Riek Machar, and he is the devil of doom and all this, and just he's basically making a cry and saying he will not let Riek Machar up to contest for his presidency and all that. But according to Madam Rebecca Nyandeng Garang, which is the widowed wife of John Garang, in the afternoon session, he refused to let even some of the political officials there talk. He said, you have no say in this topic that we have right now. You can't talk, you can't do anything. So the following Monday, following Sunday, they all were supposed to meet again, and everybody just didn't show up because of what happened prior. They were saying, we left the meeting, and it was very undemocratic. It didn't go anywhere. We didn't progress as a whole and as peaceful dialogue. So they said, no, we're not going. And she said personally in an interview with the Evening London Post that Riek Machar called her that Sunday morning or saying, hey, did you go to the meeting? And she was saying, no, we didn't go. Some of the political officials were saying how undemocratic it was. We're not going to go if we can't have our say in anything. So essentially, Salva Kiir is at the meeting saying, where are all these people at? How come they're not here? How come they aren't here with these peaceful talks? We're supposed to be having peaceful talks and no one's here. So in his mind, he's thinking that there's a coup attempt to overthrow the government. So he suspects a coup attempt and he orders his government officials to go, or his army officials to go arrest the political officials of the SPLM, the people who were in the meetings prior. So he sends his guards to go arrest them, and then, some of the Nuer ethnic group in the army hear about this order to go arrest all the political detainees, and they go out and go rescue Riek Machar and go get him out of his house, I guess, in time. And then in that meanwhile, in that same scenario, Salva Kiir ordered his general to go disarm all 34 guards who were guarding Riek Machar's house. And the general was saying there, I'm disarming you guys because I'm trying to help you guys. I'm going to help you guys and do all this. So after he does that and disarms all 34 guards, he sent in his personal militia, the Tiger unit, to go kill. He killed all of them, destroyed the government house. It wasn't even his personal house. It was a government house for Riek Machar. Completely destroyed it, fired it, burned it down, and then they went and found Riek Machar's brother, who was commander of the guards there, and killed him mercilessly at a hotel. And so, everyone's hearing all these reports of gunfires going off and just everything that's happening in Juba. And he orders the disarmament of all army personnel in the SPLA army. And then not too long after, he just orders the rearmament of everybody except for the Nuer ethnic group, which is the second largest ethnic group in South Sudan, and then Dinka being the first, which the president is Dinka. So we've always had this conflicting, tensions between Dinka and Nuer. But once people started hearing that the Nuer people who got disarmed never got their guns back, they're just, raising up suspicion, saying, why aren't we getting our guns back? Why aren't we having our guns and everybody else is? Right as they asked that question, the answer was a bullet. So they just started shooting at each other from there. And word got out, and it spread out into the city of Juba, and it started in the headquarters and then started just expanding out into the city. And he went in after that, after, the Nuer people started saying, why are we being disarmed? He went and ordered his army general to go and tell all his army officials to go door to door in every Nuer home, if any Nuer person you find, to basically kill them and exterminate them, go door to door and just mass murder them. So basically he went execution style and just, they did that, and then reports started going out saying that these mass atrocities were happening. People are being killed mercilessly for no reason. You saw a Nuer person's home completely destroyed and looted, and then right next to him is a Dinka home, completely fine, nothing touched. And that's how the scenarios were going. They were only targeting one ethnic group as the reports were going. So Peter Gadet Yak is the highest Nuer commander in the SPLA army. He started getting reports of this and saying, how is this happening? Why is this happening? So he defected from the SPLA army, and he made up a majority of the SPLA army. The Nuer people made up probably about 50% or more of the SPLA army. So a large number of people from the SPLA army just defected and said, we are fighting for the freedom of South Sudan, the freedom of the people who are mercilessly getting killed, who have no ties with this political crisis and what's happening within the SPLM. How are elderly children, just, civilians, how are they mercilessly being killed and executed and just thrown into ditches and grave bodies and burned alive for no reason? What have they done wrong? So he in that statement goes that, he's not fighting to be a rebel. I'm not a rebel. I'm fighting for the people of South Sudan and the people who are getting killed for no reason, essentially. So according to Peter Koder, the same eyewitness who spoke at our forum, he said from December 15th until now, the president declared it to be illegal to walk in the streets if you were a Nuer person. So essentially, if you were caught in the streets and they looked at your ID and you were a Nuer, they shot you point blank right there. And he was saying, the president kept declaring, it's safe, all towns are safe, come back to work, everybody come back to work. He was saying those people that actually did, got killed, and he was saying, if I came back to work, I wouldn't be here right now. And he got not executed, he got lifted out of South Sudan on the 8th, I think around the 18th, by the U.S. Embassy. And he's just very thankful for that they got him out in time before anything else happened. And then basically, Riek Machar, he didn't say that I'm going to plan this coup attempt and be the rebel leader. He was essentially pushed into that category because of his ethnicity and because of what was happening to the Nuer people of just South Sudan and all that. And then there's another army called the White Army. The White Army is a make of all Nuer youth, and the White Army was formed back in the Civil War between the North and the South to protect the Nuer people from wrongdoings and from undemocratic ways of the North that was happening back in, when the Civil War was happening. So they've always been around just to protect the Nuer people. And they started hearing all these reports that their family members, people they knew, people closest to them, just were getting killed by the thousands. So that just upraged so much emotion into all the people, because they're sitting there thinking, the people we trusted, these police officers, these army generals, these people that are supposed to be role models, are going door to door mercilessly killing us. And if you didn't have any clue prior to that was happening, I mean, you'd be running up to them with arms, as little kids do, you know, thinking they're their hero and everything, running up to them just saying, hey, you know, I appreciate you and everything. But to the fact that they just turned and started killing people mercilessly is just something that just didn't happen. And then the white army retaliated and essentially went to Boer and did the exact same thing that happened back in '91 with the Boer massacre, and destroyed the town of Boer, destroyed just everything in there, and lit the town on fire essentially. And that just caused a lot of more tensions between the Nuer and the Dinka people ethnically. So it's just a really huge, I guess, counterattack, because they were so angry, and it was, I guess, a sign of revenge.
What is Uganda role in South Sudan?
Uganda's role in South Sudan started back in the civil war between the North and the South. Uganda was fighting against the Lord Resistance Army back in the civil war when it was happening, and then South Sudan was fighting against the North. So they signed an agreement back then to, you know, work together and to try to help each other defeat those rebellious groups that were going against them. And then Museveni, who is the president of Uganda, is a dictator essentially. I mean, he's been president for about 30 years now, and he's just been forming this dictator hub in East Africa, because the Kenyan president is also essentially classified as a dictator because of his wrongdoings through human rights violations, through the laws of you can't be gay, or gay right laws and everything. You know, it's a crime to be gay. They punish or kill you to be gay in Kenya. And then Uganda, just through him ruling for 30 years. And then Sudan, al-Bashir has been a dictator. And then now Salva Kiir is becoming a dictator. Essentially, Museveni has been essentially the bad uncle of the East African countries, and he's been the one implementing all these things that have been happening and just trying to, you know, uprise and set a fire on it. So what they believe back in 2005, some believe, and some theorists believe, that it was Museveni and Sudan's president Omar al-Bashir who planned John Garang's death, because they were supposed to be, he died in a helicopter crash between Uganda and Sudan. So some believe, you know, that it was actually planned for his death to be a part of everything, and then for Salva Kiir to be the predecessor and to rise to being president. So essentially, you know, planning this 10, 15-year plan essentially to take over and to become a dictator hub and everything through all that. But Ugandan's forces have even strengthened and gotten bigger currently because of the invasion of basically South Sudan. I mean, they've deployed thousands and thousands of troops with aerial helicopters bombing towns and just to oversee of all that. But it's not even, according to an article I read, Museveni, the president of Uganda, at a Great Lakes Regional Summit in Angola on January 14th, basically revealed to the world and to the people at the press conference that he's the real president of South Sudan. He's been the one, I guess, meddling in the behind the scenes and through helping Salva Kiir, I guess, dictate the country and everything up. And then just one thing that Uganda is really big in the role of South Sudan's conflict is that they make up the majority of the army now. It's not even essentially, let's bring an example to conflict, but it's not a brother-brother fight anymore. It once was a brother-brother fight against, you know, the Nuer and the Dinka, and then now Salva Kiir, you know, called a friend to come over into this fight and to beat up his brother And essentially that's what has happened. He's called a bigger friend to come over and fight his war for him. And Uganda is on the front lines of this war now. And there was an article, on January 18th where Uganda commander tweeted out the strategic capture of Bor, which is one of the major cities or major towns in South Sudan. He tweeted out first that the Ugandan People's Defense Forces recaptured Bor. Not that the SPLA or the government of South Sudan has recaptured Bor. And then after the spokesperson of the SPLA army saw that tweet, he goes out and to say that the government of South Sudan has recaptured Bor. You know, for that in itself just explains what role Uganda is doing. They have a way bigger role than the SPLA does. They're essentially commanding this whole fight, and the government of South Sudan and the commander of SPLA are going to the Ugandan People's Defense Forces and taking orders from them. They're fighting in the back while letting the Ugandan People Forces fight it for them. And the biggest thing is that Kiir, he just can't maintain all these three militaries that he runs. So the Ugandan People's Force is ran by one of the Ugandan commanders, but he has some reign in it. And then there's the military, the personal military regime that he recruited and made with his Tiger unit. And then there's the actual national army of the SPLA. So essentially he can't maintain everybody and make orders. So this is why these mass atrocities keep occurring and keep happening, because of all these soldiers that are out everywhere. They're not trying to listen to Salva Kiir. They're listening to the Ugandan president, or these people are not listening to him, or, you know, so he can't control and maintain all those governments. So those armies are just going out and committing mass atrocities to civilians in Bor, in Malkal, and in Bentiu, and just going around. And then recently, 3 days ago, they signed a cessation of hostilities on January 23rd, but recently, of like 3 days ago, there was reports from the rebellion group that the SPLA army, the government, has been going out to Bor, Bentiu, and Malkal and committing mass atrocities, just like the night of December 15th, going door to door, executing everybody in the towns. And it's not even specifically Nuer now. They've moved it to a bigger problem of killing Shilluk is another tribe, the Anyuak is another tribe, and just major other tribes now. So they're bringing all these other tribes into this conflict now, or just escalating the war even more. So it's just crazy. It's just, you know, brother fight that's turned into a brother's friends fight that's now beating up the brothers' little sisters and elderly and children, because all these children are being mercilessly killed. All the elderly are being mercilessly killed for no reason.
Time soon, and what are your opinions how this type of conflict can be avoided in the future?
I guess for the government authorities, I guess the first immediate option would be to withdraw the Ugandan troops from South Sudan, because that in itself would create a lot more stability and make people feel more safe that Uganda is not in this fight anymore. And then the second thing would be to release the political detainees that are still, I guess, arrested for this coup attempt of overthrowing the government. I think he's released 6 of the 11 as of today, but he's still detaining the other 5 or so people. And then the vice president, Madam Gundeng, or Madam Rebecca Nyandeng Garang, she's also escaped. I think there are the 4 government officials who didn't get arrested. So those are the 4 that didn't get arrested. And then I guess another means of peace would be national dialogue, just for all the people of South Sudan, from the youth to the religious leaders to the political leaders to humanitarian crisis commissions to just everybody, to just have national dialogue and to have these peace talks. And I guess hiring of an adequate Reconciliation Commission to see all the atrocities and to, I guess, investigate in the human rights violations that have been committed against the people. And we just need a really good team to go in there and to actually investigate everything that's happened. And just to, I guess, as citizens and as little people and how little our voices are, the best thing we can do is just spread awareness and just telling them word of mouth, social networks, just, you know, spreading the word through our friends, through people we know, just everybody around us, and just trying to get international pressure to convene in this whole conflict, because, you know, there's substantial evidence that the Geneva Convention laws have been broken and have been violated, because there has been mass atrocities against children, elderly people, and even reports of pregnant people who just gave birth an hour before were killed mercilessly right after, with the baby dying right an hour after. You know, and again, it's just the government of South Sudan has to be held accountable for the atrocities that they've committed and the 7 laws that they violated in the Article 3 of the Geneva Convention. You know, and we just need the international community to come in and try to help raise awareness and to help indict him on charges against, you know, the humanity and the people of South Sudan. Yeah, it could be avoided in the future just through those steps. Through creating a national army, you know, and mixing all the ethnic groups, so it's not clearly just one ethnic group that is a majority and makes up the majority of the army. You know, just trying to mix it up and get all type of ethnic groups. That would be one. And then just national dialogue through the political leaders and through the religious leaders and all that. But I mean, if we can just spread awareness, I mean, social media is huge. You know, all these social networks are just huge thing to push awareness. To where if the Coney incident, you know, how that got so much hype off the social networks and how that got so much attention, the world was actually watching. The world was actually engaged in saying something is happening wrong in the world. We need to stand up. You know, why can't we do that essentially for this? So just spreading awareness through the social networks, I guess, would be a huge thing through the youth to do, and just trying to get, you know, peace through reconciliation and just peace dialogues.
That was before Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber happens and people just don't.
Exactly. It's a matter. I think there was a professor that gave her stance basically on what was happening in Africa through the forum we hosted in Northfield, and she was just saying that, you know, we get so distracted in all these little things in life, and it's a matter of staying informed. You know, we get informed for about a day or two, and we're in depth in it. And then, you know, the next thing happens. We forget about it. But it's a matter of staying informed is what we need to do as a whole and as a community. Stay informed with the topic, stay informed of what's happening, and actually put action into it and, you know, trying to spread awareness through it, instead of just forgetting about it like in the next day and saying, you know, what's the next big thing, I guess, essentially.